Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest from the live radar, run through the UKV, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature. So it's turning much colder towards the end of this week into the weekend, with Scandinavian high and easterly winds pushing in. Initially this area is chilly but nothing crazy in terms of the cold temperatures, with mid-single digit highs and some cold rain showers, quite grim chilly conditions, and there could be some winteriness over the higher ground. As we head into next week and beyond that into the second week of December, as we'll see in the GFS, GEM, Eastern WF and the ensembles, it's highly likely that we're going into quite a prolonged cold spell. The severity of the cold is the uncertain part at the moment, but it's looking highly likely we're going to be below average, chilly, mid-single digit highs maximum, even for areas in the south, and the potential, at least from some of the models today, for seeing some quite severe cold with widespread snow and ice days. That is only, though, on some of the most severe runs. There still is quite a lot of scatter, and some of the runs even introducing slightly milder air for a time in the south. So we'll have to decipher all of that in the second half of the video. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, as you start on the live radar, you can see it is drying up. There are a few showers in the north, but widely it's pretty dry, and that's because higher pressure is building in, ready to bring us that easterly wind, and that will be arriving over the course of the next few days. Now, initially you can look to our east, the air's not ridiculously cold, winteriness over Scandinavia, but towards Denmark, Germany, no real cold at the moment, and that's why towards the weekend, yes, it's going to be chilly, it's going to be well below average, but it's not going to be anything ridiculously cold, because that air to our east is not too cold this time of year, or at least this year it's not particularly cold. So that is a little bit of a restricting factor on the coldness this weekend, and that's why we're not expecting really any widespread snow, more just cold, miserable conditions. But there could be some winteriness over the higher ground as slowly Arctic air pulls out into Scandinavia and towards northwest Europe, and it could send us really into a polar plunge as we head towards sort of the 10th of December. Now, if we put on the temperatures as of around 3 p.m. today, you can see that it's not particularly mild today, but it's not particularly cold either. Some yellows appearing in the south and east across parts of the Republic of Ireland, across the north where some thicker cloud is, and it's holding those temperatures down towards the mid to low single digits. Look at that, a lot of lighter blues there around 3 p.m, which is temperatures getting towards the freezing point. So it is really quite cold in quite a few areas, and I'm expecting to see this much more widespread. And if you look to the north and east, the air is cold, but it's nothing ridiculous. None of these purples and pinks, which are well out to our east and our north. So we'll have to wait a bit of time for cold air really to get dragged out of the Arctic, but it will turn cold towards the weekend regardless. Now, if you go over to the UKV and have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the next 5 days, unfortunately it hasn't updated today. We've only got the 3 p.m. run from yesterday, so it's 12 hours out of date really, but we can't do much about that, unfortunately. So we'll have to run through yesterday evening's run and see what that is showing. So you can see through today, not too many showers around, and through tonight, some of that rain pushing into the west of Scotland, but you can see the flow starting to come in from the east. And by Thursday, you can see pretty much stagnant airflow, and that's as those winds veer in the east. And you can see by Friday, showers starting to push in from the east. Nothing particularly wintry at this stage, but there could be a bit of snow over the higher ground with it. And as we head towards Sunday, look at that, snow showers over the course of Scottish hills, northern England hills, and parts of Wales. Elsewhere, though, generally cold rain. But it is time to pull in a really chilly air mass. You can see the upper air temperatures getting down to sort of -6 to -8 degrees. So it is really cold, and you expect to see snow with that, but it's because it's coming over the North Sea, and it's not a ridiculously cold air mass in terms of its direction, coming in from the east where the ground conditions are not particularly cold at the moment, and we need this more to come from the Arctic, and the dew points as well. Look at that, they are cold but nothing ridiculous, more around sort of the 1 or 2 degree mark, maybe freezing in a few spots. So that's why it's 4 or 5 degrees on Saturday, Sunday, not 1 or 2 with snow, because it's just coming from a slightly too mild direction, and the air to our east isn't quite cold enough throughout the atmosphere, even though the 850 HPA level, it traditionally is cold enough. If you look at the max temperatures, You can see today, this afternoon, those temperatures really hovering around the low single digits in the north, as we saw on the live radar, but in the south and the east and parts of Wales, parts of Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, maybe 7 or 8 degrees, or maybe slightly higher. Of course, the evening temperatures don't drop away too far, apart from we have clear skies across northern England, parts of Wales, and parts of southern England, where it could drop down towards freezing. Tomorrow afternoon, widely sort of 5, 6, 7 degrees, but that is on a cooling trend. But the 1st of December is going to be a cold day, the start to meteorological winter. As we head into the 2nd of December, you can see cold overnight temperatures, but by the day, widely sort of 5 to 7 degrees. And into Saturday, again, cold overnight, but nothing ridiculous. And the reason for that is because cloud amounts don't allow the radiation from the ground. So that's why the temperatures don't cool down too significantly overnight. And that's why we're not seeing any widespread frost, because there's a lot of gloomy skies coming in from the east. And look at that, Saturday, widely 5 or 6 degrees. And Sunday isn't going to be a lot better. Overnight temperatures dropping down towards 2 or 3, but again, nothing too far below freezing. And look at Sunday afternoon, 3 or 4 degrees widely, really chilly. And it's only going to go downhill after that as we head into around that sort of 5th to 10th of December point, where there is the chance for some really bitterly cold air to move in. Now, if we do go over to the GFS and see what that is showing over the next couple of weeks, there's the 6 o'clock run, and you can see the high pressure building up over the top of us at the moment. It starts to pull in an easterly wind by Friday, and a cold air mass pushes in. Again, look at the upper air temperatures, you can see it is cold, but nothing ridiculous. No blues, no minus 10 or minus 15 isotherm anywhere near us. Look at the temperature deviation, slightly below average, and the potential equivalent temperature cold, but nothing ridiculous. It's beyond that. You can see the high pressure eventually tries to retrogress up towards Greenland, and this is the time where we could see slightly milder air in around a week's time. This low, trying to run up from the south, you can see it's got mild air contained within it, and some models have it pushing in. If it bumps into that cold air, could produce widespread snowfall. Others just have the mild air taking over, and it could give a few days of milder conditions. But the one consistency we are seeing is that Greenland block to eventually strengthen and win out and plunge us into a northerly wind and going bitterly cold. Look at that, minus 5 isotherm engulfing us. Look at the minus 10 isotherms much closer by, feeding in much colder air from the north and the east. Of course, we've still got that milder air trying to nudge in, so it does mean if this was shifted slightly further northwards, the south would be in milder air. But in this situation, we'd see a dividing line between that milder air and cold air over the top of southern England, and it could produce quite a bit of snow around that day 10 point. Beyond that, though, the cold air eventually continues to win out, and we just stay bitterly cold before milder air runs in off the Atlantic and could give major snow. And if we do run it back and have a look at the potential equivalent, you can just see how in those darker blues, really quite cold air, again, the upper air temperatures at 850 HPA are only slightly colder than this weekend, but it's because the origins of that air, the dew points, and all the way through the atmosphere, it is really cold. So you can see those darker blues, and if we do skip to this weekend, you can see it's blue, but nothing particularly dark and only little purples mixing in. So this is just why we have to look at these different temperature profiles to be able to assess exactly how cold an air mass is. But the GFS once again today is going very wintry and very cold in general. If you compare it to the GEM up to day 10, again, high pressure building in, an easterly wind coming in, initially quite a cold air mass, trying to nudge that low up from the south, again, trying to bring that milder air in. You can see there the 5 degree isotherm is actually just to our south, but the cold air wins out and we go plunged into a low pressure cold spell. So not just cold air plunging in, but low pressure developing within it, and that could be a very wintry and snowy pattern there. With a lot of wintry showers, potentially occluded fronts, that could produce a lot of heavy snowfall. But generally, look at that real cold pool over the top of us, blocking to our north and east. We are locked into this pattern. The only worry you'd see with this is maybe this milder air spiralling in and cutting it off for a time, which could cut short this colder spell. But regardless, we're still seeing sort of 5 to 10 days here of below average conditions, and at least a few of those days in there very cold and wintry. If we do go to the ECMWF, which is the coldest run, I'd say, today, you can see easterly winds pushing in, really quite cold. That low pressure trying to nudge up from the south, trying to bring that milder air in, and it actually does. You can see there the ECMWF, even though it is the coldest run in the longer term, it actually does bring up that very mild air for a day or two next week, this time next week. But look at the cold air plunging in from the Arctic, and we go into a locked northeast. This is sort of the coldest pattern you can possibly get, because the isobars are straight from Scandinavia, Svalbard, and the North Pole, and the high pressure to our north and our west does not look like it is dissipating at all, and you can just see bitterly cold air plunging towards the UK. Low pressure to our east, providing a lot of wintry showers and the potential for a lot of convection and maybe some more prolonged areas of snow with this as well. Again, though, we have to remember, from all these runs, any chance of any widespread wintriness starts in perhaps 6-7 days' time. The colder weather coming up later this week into the weekend is just below average, chilly, cold with some wintriness over hills, but not quite cold enough for any widespread snow or anything like that. But it will do quite a bit to cool down the surface conditions. So it does mean if there is very cold air plunging in a week's time, it can turn us colder much faster. So that is one thing we do have to take into account as well. So east of DF, bitterly cold today, like the other two runs, and you can see that in the upper air in the temperature deviation. Now, if you finish, have a look at the ensembles. Now, you can see these from the GFS, the 6 o'clock run. We are well below average over the course of the next few weeks. And it's going to be really quite cold. You see the GFS operational run there. It's one of the colder runs, but it's not an outlier. There are still plenty, though, of milder runs that we do have to take account with, specifically around that sort of 6th to 10th of December points, sort of in the mid-range, and that's because that milder air bumping up from the south, but you can see the majority of runs still keep us below average. Quite a few precipitation spikes there, and you'd expect quite a few of those to be snowfall. But regardless of those milder runs, or even the bitterly cold runs, the general trend from the Ensemble members is for below average, with the potential, as you can see around that 10th of December points, for some very cold runs where those air masses are dropping below that -6 level, maybe down to -8, -10 or lower, and it of course will be colder in the north. You can see this even better from the dew points. Look at that towards freezing, so showing you a cold Arctic air mass, very dry cold air. And look at the 2 meter temperatures, all trending down towards sort of 3 to 5 degree highs. And of course, you see the white line here, that's the average, is around 5 or 6 degrees over the next couple of weeks. But of course, that's taken into account those milder runs as well, which do look very much outnumbered. And you can see the very cold runs hovering around freezing. So somewhere in the middle is the most likely thing at the moment, which is sort of low single digits with the potential for wintriness. And of course, that's London. Rural areas will be colder, and further northwards as well. And you can see snow spikes are starting to appear quite numerously, but no consistency with this. Of course, we need to see sort of the 5-day time frame and a lot of consistency to say anything with any detail. Now, after you finish the video, but have a look at the ECMWF ensemble members, the midnight run. They're even more persistent on this very cold weather. The average is down to -5, and there are much fewer milder runs. You can see the operational run there spiking around the 7th of December, but then going very cold straight after it. So that's why I said there could be a brief spike in milder air around that 7th, 8th of December point before turning colder once again. The Eastern UF is really bitterly cold today, and this would produce a prolonged cold spell. And if we get some of those colder runs, like the operational run, like even the control run there, it could be even a severely cold spell. Again, the big thing with this is not going to be snowfall or anything like that. It's going to be the prolonged nature at the moment. A good week plus of colder conditions. So sometimes we do get severe cold spells that last 2 or 3 days of big snowfall, amber warnings, things like that. But the big thing with this is it's the prolonged nature. We could, of course, see the severe cold, severe wintriness within it, but the big indicator at the moment, and the big issue at the moment, is going to be prolonged. And that's even more of an issue with the energy crisis at the moment, because it's not just a couple of days we need to turn the heating on to full. It could be a week or 2 or more, especially if this blocking persists. Now, if you finally just look at the 2 meter temperatures from this ECMWF run, I'm expecting it to be really cold. Look at that, around the 10th of December point, the average getting down to sort of 2 or 3 degree highs, really cold. You can see some of these low temperatures getting down to -5 or lower, which is ridiculously cold from Ensemble members. So yeah, a real cold signal today, and it continues to look likely we're going to be having a really cold, prolonged spell of weather, and there's potential for some bitterly cold weather within that, and we could perhaps see something like a polar plunge or an Arctic blast, like we saw on the ECMWF run around that day 8, 9, 10 point. But we'll have to keep an eye on it. At the moment though, just a prolonged cold and average spell is the thing we can say for certainty. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Make sure you stay safe out there, as it is going to be turning a lot colder towards the weekend, and even colder next week, so do wrap up warm, and of course, as I said, stay safe. But I'll see you again for another video soon.